this is amazing. Audio works on Linux. Okay, it's time to invite other people.
Here.
Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, how's it going? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, I can hear you great.
Are we, all right, I got you full screen now. Are we supposed to be looking at your screen?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, you're welcome to hang out.
Yeah, I'm as amazed as anyone because I just installed this Arch Linux server and sound wasn't working.
Oh, yeah, that's yeah. Right. Can you see us, Paul?
Nope, it's
Oh,
just
nope.
Jason's avatar.
I guess there is no camera here, huh?
Oh, there is.
Oh, there it
But
is.
not.
Okay. Is
Hey.
that better? What's up, Paul?
Why are there so many people? No, I'm kidding.
We're moving into your house now, sorry.
Oh my God, the house is being robbed. I knew it. This is why we need those cameras. Well, welcome everyone. Who's there? It's I see Jason and Adrian. And
And
I'm Jonathan.
Hey,
Guys,
Jonathan.
I mentioned to you.
I'm Malik.
Hey, Malik. Jason told me a lot about you. All good.
Oh, I'm about to say.
Yeah. No, I'm really glad that you come. We can meet. Well, yeah, I didn't really have anything planned, but Adrian and I normally meet once a week, and we talk about stuff. And I would love to hear your questions or feedback. And I can also give like a brief introduction. I've had some practice because I gave a talk about Detroit arcology 2 nights ago to this group. Okay, well, I guess I'll start with, since there are 2 new people here. Hi, I'm Paul. And Adrian and I started this project to cooperatively invest in neighborhoods in Detroit. And we're both interested in affordable housing. And we bought this house that you're in. We closed on it in June, and then I was back in August to get, running water and internet and electricity. I joked to my friends here in Missouri, we live on a farm. And when I went back to Detroit, I had like fewer utilities and fewer internet at the beginning, but it made me like want to wake up every morning and fix things. So that was really motivating. And then I went back to Missouri. So where I am right now is a maker farm, and we're learning how, you can tell, like I sleep in a pretty spare room that has like plywood walls. This is a building made of compressed earth brick, which is like a cool material. It's basically dirt that's been compressed. And it soaks up energy from the sun and heats it up during the day, and then warms it at night, but cools the air during the day. So it's kind of like built in Mother Nature's temperature control. And this is an apprenticeship, so I'm learning how to build all kinds of open source technologies from this mad genius, Marcin Jakubowski, who is like a physics PhD and immigrated from Poland. And he started this farm. And so we're learning how to make 3D printers now, which Jason knows because we kind of met through my interview video when I applied. And I brought back the printer parts and tried to make progress. But yeah, there is no way I think I could have gotten very far because I was missing too many parts. And so today there are about 14 people here. They fly from all over the world. We have a guy from Sweden, we have a guy from Peru. Holger, who's from Germany, arrived a few days ago. Ken is from Indonesia. A bunch of Americans as well. And yeah, it's really motivating. So we have this huge workshop, made from CEBs, and we're working on 3D printers. And it's taking longer than 3 days. The reality is always much slower than the theory, but once the 3D printers are up, there are a lot of things that you can print with them having to do with technology and house. I mean, they're so far small things like fixtures and knobs and things, but in the future, when we have large scale 3D printers, we can print like wall panels. Wall panels are 4 feet by 8 feet, and the goal is to shred plastic and use waste plastic. So we have too much waste plastic, all these plastic bottles. And being here is kind of a wonderland. Like, you're never quite sure whether to take Marcin seriously, because he'll say something like, oh, we can solve housing, or we can we'll recycle all the world's plastic Coke bottles and print affordable housing from them. And it sounds pretty wild. But then the day comes and then we actually make progress. So it takes a few days longer than promised, but they're definitely very inspirational goals. Like tomorrow, we're supposed to start building a tractor, an open source tractor, which is life size. There's one running here on camp already. It was used to lift the second story of the house we were building. So there's some videos online. I can send you links if you're interested. But in July, we were building this 1,000 square foot home. And this is the reason why I applied originally, because I talked to Adrian a lot. We found this. I Googled open source home because I was thinking, how could we solve affordable housing from scratch in a way that no one has thought of before? Why don't we see if there's like why don't we cut out the architecture costs and like see if there's a design online? And I Googled open source home, and this was the first home that came up. It was called the Seed Eco Home, and they claimed that 2 people could build this 1,000 square foot home for $50,000 of materials in 2 weeks. And I thought, like, well, that's probably way too good to be true. I've made some claims like that myself in the past. I'm going to sign up for this apprenticeship and see for myself what can be done. And definitely it takes longer than 2 weeks and more than 2 people. I think if you had 2 people who were geniuses like Marcin, maybe he's like maybe he thinks he can clone himself or something, but probably two of him could build this house in 2 weeks. But mere mortals will take longer, and we're documenting the process. We built like a third home, and we put that up to the second story like very quickly with like 14 people in 5 days. Not the interior, just like framing of the house, and there are time-lapse videos which are on the internet. And the cost of the materials is probably closer to $42,000. And I've been talking to him a lot. Like, he's very interested in Detroit. I tell him what we've been doing. We bought this house for $34,000, and we're probably going to spend another $40,000 renovating it, and then we want to sell it affordably with 20% more than we spent on it to a family that we help get a loan through the Neighborhood Association Corporation of America, NACA, or Detroit Community Wealth, or another group like that. But then land, I basically treat as free because there are these neighborhood lots. So lots within 500 feet of this house, there are 5 of them we can buy for $250 each, and then just transfer the title to someone that the community decides who they would like to put it to use for the benefit of the neighborhood. And then the auction closed recently. I didn't place any bids. I would love to hear from Adrian, and I'll stop talking soon about whether he placed any bids. But we looked at one house, which was a duplex, very big duplex, 3 stories, and it started at $1,000 and it closed for $14,900, so about $15,000. And probably it would require at least the same amount of money, $40,000, to bring it up to livable. So 15 plus 40, $55,000 for a great big duplex house. That's pretty hard to beat. And so I'm changing my thinking, like when is it worth it to build a building from scratch, with healthy materials, as opposed to renovating all these great buildings and houses around Detroit that still need work, still have lead and asbestos and things that we're dealing with right now. Okay, I'll stop. Why don't we go around the room, and you probably all introduced yourself to each other, so I apologize for making you do it again. But if you can introduce yourself to me and kind of say what you're curious about the project or something about yourself, I'd appreciate it. And this meeting is recorded, so hopefully that's okay with everyone. We believe in being open source and transparent, so all of our meetings are uploaded to the internet so people can learn what we're about.
I'll go first. I'm Jason, and like I said, I met Paul through the OSC, his YouTube submission, and found him relatable, and found obviously the project relatable, and then Detroit Arcology on top of that. I was hoping that Paul would like to use some of the techniques and tools that Marston's developing to actually refurbish and actually use here, these houses. And I know that's going to require a larger facility to build the machines that build all of the parts and panels to refurbish houses. And that's kind of the work that I'd like to do in the future. So, and I know that the cheapest way to get that up and running is to build the workshop yourself out of the same tools that you would be building the rest of the refurbishments of it. So that's kind of like where I'm hoping to head with this, is to have the room in order to do that type of thing, maybe turn it into its own standalone business to help the neighborhood and things like that. But I figured there's still going to be a huge learning curve involved with it, at least getting it up and running. And so this is the perfect laboratory to teach ourselves all the skills, and then hopefully leverage it as some kind of, just like Marcin is doing down there, an apprenticeship program to try and get other people involved and trained up so that we can amplify our labor capacity to handle this stuff like this. And because I know finding help is difficult, and so some of the people around here finding jobs is difficult. So, and then housing is kind of related to finding a job. So maybe it's all related. Maybe it can all be a little bit more tight knit than we even think, and be a lot more communal, and especially if it involves gardening. There's all kinds of skills that I would love to learn that I'm sure you all know. So I just like to be involved with interesting people doing interesting things, quite frankly. It's as simple as it is.
100%. I love it. Thanks, Jason.
No, it's fine. No, that's fine. That's okay. My name's Jonathan. I was just dropping through to look at the house. I'm really passionate about like ecosystem restoration and like community food forests. It's kind of my passion. And yeah, I'm happy to learn about all this stuff. It sounds super rad. I'm into permaculture, and yeah, hearing about what you're doing out there is cool.
You're saying all the right words, Jonathan. Do you need land? Would you like land to start a community food forest?
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of looking at like public lands currently, like really into the idea of like edible parks and kind of places where people can forage free food and native food. So yeah, I definitely want it where I live, like be growing things for myself, but also would like to help, the public spaces for sure. So
Yeah, no, I would love for neighborhoods to have that, to teach people how to be self-sufficient, also kids, like for them to learn and then also to be able to eat locally as well. Detroit Future Cities, which you may know, is a nonprofit which has developed a strategic framework. They have basically I think 38 pre-designed plans for lots, and you can just if you have a lot, you can download their design, and they have designs for urban farm, greenhouse, maybe a tiny home. I don't know how much they've done yet, but they've done a fair amount of work. And it may be aligned very closely with what you want to do.
yeah, that sounds perfect. I'm interested to learn more for sure.
Yeah.
I
Can you
actually
say,
know where to find those plans, because I looked for them at one point. I had trouble actually finding those different plans. Have you actually been able to find them?
no, actually, I've never actually found them either. So that's the thing. I think nonprofits often have this problem where they're funded to do a lot of work, and it's, I guess the evaluation of them is not always clear. Like it's not clear whether they're building or not. I guess what motivates me and probably Adrian is that we see an inefficiency in the world. It's a very technocratic approach. We're like, oh, housing is hard, but the houses are there. There's a Wayne County auction. There's this, there's that, and it only takes conceivable amounts of money. And if the Detroit Future Cities really wanted to, they could do what we're doing, right? I mean, we're just two guys, and but they haven't. And so then it's there are all these questions come up how can we work with them, or what are their intentions in this space? And I would still love to find the designs, because I think they're a nonprofit and receive public funding, and there's a cool coffee table book at Adrian's house about it as well. So but in any case, we would love to help you with the building part. We're very grassroots. I really just want to get in there and do stuff, and not really spend a lot of time with bureaucracy and forming nonprofits. Yeah, I'm still open, to opinions about whether we should be a nonprofit, but I know how to build a greenhouse. We did it a few days ago, and I know that we have land soon, or that there is land in Detroit. And if Detroit Future Cities, we can't find the designs or partner with them in time, we can just do it ourselves, and that would be fun too.
My turn.
Yeah.
Well, you already know who you are.
Yeah,
My name is Malik. Me and Jason basically on the same path. I'm a little bit more remote type. My end goal is not to really have a business, but to just live off the grid and educate people for free. I don't believe in none of the governments are sustainable to the population. Don't believe in capitalism or really any other ism. I want to teach kids for free, teach people how to live off the grid sustainably, agriculture. You've been using open source software, anything that can literally just disattach you from how modern society uses its model to just do things that's just not healthy for the people. When I heard about the project through Jason, I was familiar with it somewhat. We watched a few videos together, and yeah, And as relates to just the manual labor part of it, you know, I'm all game for it. I'm just here to learn and actually to implement it and help other people's in need outside the United States, because I planned on leaving the United States in the next, I guess you can say, 7 to 10 years and doing what we have here somewhere else. Because, you know, I'm pretty much fed up with American life. I'd rather just live somewhere simpler, have a peace of mind, some land, grow food, educate, and just, you know, try to leave some type of legacy that's something that's based on merit.
Yeah, I love the sentiment and the teaching for free. Definitely skills, like there are things that have been financialized, like housing and education, and you can also view them as sort of like sacred and sort of a right for everyone to learn and have a place to live. It reminds me of, well, yeah, I think Jason and I share interest in teaching, and he's mentioned you in this context as well, like teaching for free. Like we would love to, one use for this house that you're in is a cafe where people can have classes. They can learn the skills that I'm learning here. I'd love to bring it back to Detroit. You know, first I want to do it myself, like build a 3D printer or build a house. But then definitely, you know, I've been a teacher all my life, and I love the idea of a place where people can, you know, exchange skills and, you know, empower themselves. And there are other ways of making it financially sustainable other than charging people who, you know, need it the most, who can like least afford it. So I love those plans. We have a lot of to talk about because, you know, I myself believe still in the social good that capitalism can do when it's used correctly. But I know there are a lot of parasitic, monopolistic elements where it's not used correctly, and people don't trust it for that reasons. And I still, you know, love the United States, but know that it's been through a lot, and that there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of misunderstanding and conflict. But, you know, the more I think we agree in values, and we'll have a lot to discuss in terms of like terminology and beliefs and faiths as well.
Yeah.
Well,
one thing to say that I didn't realize, yeah, it's cool that you're like specifically into an off the grid kind of thing, because that's in a lot of ways what like, I've also been very grounded by, just the idea of like enabling people to kind of disconnect and, you know, remove the dependency or heavy dependency on the systems that exist here, and like, yeah, being able to just, you know, have your own energy, food, and, you know, place to live. Like, and to me, I think that's one of the things I really want to focus on here. It's like, how can we make it repeatable to be able to like generate your own energy and hopefully food too, and like figure out how to make that something that many people can take advantage of. Because right now, like everyone's just dependent on TT pretty much.
Yeah, like I got solar panels on our house, and I socially engineered an extra 1,000 kilowatts,
Nice.
but we're still paying a $200 electric bill. So it's like somebody's about to get busted, because it's like, well, how they have it set up for solar in Detroit is we consume somewhere between 2,600 and 2,800 kilowatts per month. So they don't want to give you no more than about 4,000 kilowatts. So I tell them, nah, I'm not in crypto. I got a bunch of computers, servers. I need more power. You can't give me more power. Have a nice day. So he's like, oh no, hold on. Let's see what we can do. So, you know, he's on the computer, and then he leaves and go talk to his manager. He said, how many you need? I need 5. 5, no deal. So he goes back out in the hallway, he talks on the phone. Yeah, we can do the 5. So if I have an additional 1,000 kilowatts, why am I still paying a $200 or $300 electric bill? Somebody's not doing something right.
I mean, it could be as much as like, you know, your panels are installed 20 degrees off angle or something. It's many, you know.
It
could be
could,
1,000
but there's
watts short just from that one mistake from the install.
But there's always extra power on the battery. No less than about 13 to 15% is still left on the battery. So if there's always 13 to 15% left on the battery, if it never is at 0,
Sounds like your meter isn't registering the backflow through it or something.
something isn't right. Yeah.
But you know, the reason why you were able to talk them into that is because they're just writing loans.
Yeah.
The whole point is to create loans, so that, you know, that's how money is created.
Mhm.
So, and there's what I think about that, whenever I hear these schemes like that or any of these programs, I just think about, well, there's gonna be foreclosures, there's gonna be people that are recycling all of that when they pull it off of people's roofs, and then we can actually buy that and put it in ourselves. You can either help some company create a scam loan predatory, or you can actually on the back end learn the skill how to do it and then actually leverage it for what it's supposed to be used for, which is actual independent energy generation. And I'm thinking about all of that. And I think that's kind of like the connective tissue of open source allows you to utilize that, because they even have all of the fundamental building blocks of a solar power system, from the batteries to the battery management system to the inverter to the maximum power point tracker, charging controller thing, to like a Raspberry Pi to manage it all. They have open source equivalents for every commercial technology out there. And the more you can control every bit of it, the more they're repairable, because if you only lose a couple FETs from a lightning strike or something, you can just refurbish that. Or if you lose a controller because somebody made a mistake in wiring, you don't want that. You don't want your apprenticeship and, you're trying to recruit people from your school to learn how to do this, and then they make a mistake. It's like $1,000, and that just wipes out their whole worth as an apprentice. If we're getting funding to do things, they should be completely affordable. To me, that I've tried to do that in other sort of genres of technology, and I just kind of have a good feeling for how much room and equipment and stuff like that it actually takes to do on a practical level. And I think if we're able to scale as far as like get into a neighborhood, find the right people, create the social network locally to find the right people that are interested in this stuff, and also market it appropriately so that they are interested in this stuff. It's all about framing the narrative, really. If you frame solar installation technology as this is your next awesome middle-class job opportunity, then it's one thing. But if you frame it as you can pull yourself off the grid and never have to pay an energy bill, or you can power your own battery charger for your, recycled Tesla or your e-bike or something like that. Now you can get around and get your groceries, and your grandma's wheelchair can be powered off the sun. It's like, if you start to think about all the technology like that, as far as like what you can do with it, and then we have other people in the Brain Trust actively figuring out how to get it paid for and get it in the right hands, and make sure that it's sustainable to where it's not just buying things, they break and then they end up in a landfill. We can repair all this stuff. That would be amazing. I just want to participate in that kind of culture one way or another. And I think the fundamental ethics that I'm reading between the lines, maybe, of Detroit ecology, I think that would benefit from it greatly. I think it would be a home for my kind of thinking, and then hopefully fostering more people to think like that, and then learning from all of you too. Like before I was invited to the forum, I wasn't intimately familiar with what permaculture even was. And then reading into it and following all the links, it's so encompassing. It's basically like the organic top layer, or actually I'd say the foundation of life-sustaining, food part. But the technology feeds back to cleaning the water, to feeding the plants clean water. I mean, and even he's talking about what is it? Gastronomy?
No, molecular gastronomy.
Molecular?
Oh, yeah. During the pandemic, I taught myself molecular gastronomy because I'm plant-based primarily, but most people don't like plant-based living because it tastes like cardboard. So the only way to really make food taste good, when I actually did the research, was this thing called molecular gastronomy. So since I already have a science background and I have all this laboratory equipment, I taught myself molecular gastronomy, and a lot of food-based items, I can make it taste where you can't even tell the difference. And just as a test, I would make things like foods that's popular in Detroit, like chili fries with cheese, gyros, turkey sandwiches, things of that sort. And I would just make little small samples and just give it to all the guys in the neighborhood. And don't tell them it's vegan. And be like, yeah, here, try this, tell me how it tastes. The next thing I know, everybody's like, yeah, man, when next time you got that vegan shit? Because I didn't tell them until the end that it was vegan, and they was like, this vegan? I was like, yeah, got you, didn't I? So, you know, I know that healthy eating can actually taste good. And I've proven to a lot of guys in the neighborhood that it actually doesn't all taste like wet cardboard and plastic. But you have to have some type of technical skills when you do vegan cooking, because when you look at it, it's just a plant. And you have to know a little bit of science, you know, throw a little chemistry in it, know what foods are actually healthy, are plant-based. And when the chemistry is done properly, you can actually make stuff taste good.
So it's like part nutritionist, part chef.
Yeah.
Interesting. And part.
Yeah.
Through lab technician or something.
For the most part, yeah. It's mostly just chemistry. Because I made a cheese sauce and it, I didn't know that.
Sorry to interrupt. No, I have
Oh, go ahead.
two friends here who are vegan, and they would love to talk to you, and I would love to serve the vegan food at our cafe.
That's my first thought. As soon as
Yeah.
It reminds me that, you know, that restaurant, it's like a restaurant, it's like a vegan coney. They have all the coney stuff. It's
mustard chilies and onions.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
mustard
good
chili.
for youths, I guess. Yeah.
Most people like their food, but the only thing that you really get criticism on is the chili.
Oh, the chili, yeah.
I mean, of course, the price is high. Now, from actually going to cooking school and doing all this other stuff, the price points are just ridiculous too high.
I know, yeah. For a lot of that, I know it's like, it should
Yeah.
be cheaper to eat vegan because we don't
Yeah,
have
you
to
should.
do all this. crazy
Exactly, you
shit.
don't even have to refrigerate. Like
Yeah.
I made nachos
Yeah.
and I have everything sitting on the counter. It's been sitting on the counter since this morning.
Yeah.
You can't let meat sit on the counter because you'll catch salmonella poisoning.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes I forget and I
Yeah,
gotta
same
say,
for that regard.
it's plants, yeah. So, you know, it lasts longer, the shelf life is great. And actually, after 24 hours, the food actually tastes better because the flavors had a chance to really come together.
Yeah.
So, you know, why they price it so high is just,
It's because it's probably a demand.
Yeah.
Supply demand thing.
Yeah.
There's not that many people doing it.
there's not too many people doing it, it's new, it's trendy,
Yeah.
and, you know, they can get away with it.
Yeah, they can get away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least there's more competition. That's, yeah.
Yeah,
I
mean,
whatever.
Or just more.
Or just more, more knowledge of it.
Yeah.
What's the main plant-based material that you're like starting with?
most of it is just, you mean like what?
What do you, like, when you're cooking, like, when you made the cheese sauce or whatever, like, what do you make? What do you, like, are you buying stuff in bulk, or like, what are you doing to make?
Well, for like the cheese sauce, the main ingredient that surprisingly makes cheese sauce taste cheesy, which mustard, chili, and onions don't do, they just have the consistency and the color, but their cheese sauce really don't have any taste. My cheese sauce actually tastes cheesy. And one of the ingredients that I found that gives it that punch of umami is white miso. If you just buy some white
You're just kind of
miso,
taking different things. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
learning from different ethnic cultures, flavor profiles. You know, when I go into a like a seasoning place, I want to taste everything individually in its natural state. And I have the ability to memorize a flavor profile, and then I can mix those two flavors in my head and guesstimate exactly how it tastes. And then you just play with the chemistry and just, you know, you just do a fourth of a teaspoon and everything until you can mix it and get it properly. So like for my ground beef, my father's not trying to taste anything beef. He's not having it. So when I made him, well, you can't really fool nobody with a vegan hot dog. So he had a real hot dog, but the chili and the cheese sauce was vegan.
Oh, nice.
Me and my mother didn't tell him till afterwards. He was like, "You got me." So you know how when you got a hard critic, it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay, I guess this passed. That's when you know you did it right.
I want to try food, man.
Oh, yes, no problem. Next time we do something, yeah, I'll bring some stuff over.
The next month we.
I have a potluck, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to, I usually always cook like everything, not full use a lot of mushroom. I love lentil dishes.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. Yeah. About the only thing I really don't eat is like bean burgers and stuff like that. Because when I was younger, I grew up Muslim. And, no longer Muslim, and I no longer eat anything with beans in it. Because, you know, when you grow up Muslim, everything is bean everything. Bean pie, bean cake, bean ice cream. So I've been bean to death.
Yeah.
So when everybody be like, hey, we got bean burgers. No, I'm not eating.
Mushrooms, I think. are
Yeah,
also
mushroom,
good,
yes, definitely.
I just like feel, fighting actually. I think, like, there's a lot of amazing mushrooms you can harvest. Like I have these chicken of the woods mushroom. It tastes
Oh, yeah.
exactly like you ever had those ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are amazing. I made like a carbonara like sauce,
Oh, you use
pasta.
them?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah.
Do they like rehydrate and get good?
Yeah, they taste it like straight chicken.
Yeah,
It's
you just throw them in
amazing.
some warm
Yeah.
water, let them sit for like 10 to 15 minutes.
I just like fry them straight up.
I think we're hungry.
Yeah.
Same.
I mean, but you can grow mushrooms, you can grow
Yeah, yeah,
mushrooms
grow.
here. So, you
Yeah.
know, it's so easy. You just need to have a clean room
Yeah.
and use good aseptic techniques. And you can have you some mushrooms in 3 to 6 months or less.
I mean,
Yeah.
Grown some mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would love to have mushroom growing workshops. Yeah, for edible food or for medicinals or whatever people are interested in.
yeah, in Western Michigan, there's all these like microbreweries that also have like, they'll grow the hops right outside and you walk through them from the parking lot. And it's like, all these vertical planting things, and then you go into the restaurant. And they also have that other garden in the back, plus whatever local stuff. They have little sort of like brew branded restaurants. And that'd be great to have here, Seems like the perfect business model for something that includes, a grow area and cafe and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Plus,
Yeah.
if we can come up with some amazing original recipes that you can't get anywhere else.
I mean, I remember in organic chemistry, I taught a professional letting us make alcohol. And I made the strongest alcohol. It was 176 proof. I still have my notes for that. One thing you do is water it down, and that's how you bring down the alcohol content. But yeah.
I've had some interesting moonshine. Not really something that I
A
feel
friend of
safe
mine
to drink.
stole alcohol out of the lab.
No way.
Well, I want to make this cafe safe for kids, so
Yeah.
not too many drugs and substances.
That'll be the other after hours cafe that nobody.
The back room, yeah.
You got it.
Are you imagining this cafe being here? Is that what you're?
To start with, yeah, I mean, I'm open to ideas. This was something that Jason suggested, and I really like the idea. In the past, I've liked a community gathering space with food. Food has always been important in building community when you cook and eat with someone. So that's why I really love hearing about Malik's molecular gastronomy. And we used to have potlucks as well, and hopefully we can start them again. So, yeah, I mean, what do you all think? Do you think a cafe would work on the bottom floor here, like a speakeasy? Like we could get the business licenses. I don't think it would be that hard. But yeah, it's a big space.
It'd be a cool place to just have like basically just have like a cafe for normal people, and then also have like the hacking stuff going around, or like people building, repairing 3D printers. Maybe just have like a little counter. You know how they have like a gift shop in like one of those places, but this would be parts and pieces to maintain, or maybe get kids interested in buying an Arduino for like $1 or something like that.
Mhm.
And then maybe going to a programming class once they realize how accessible and affordable the technology is.
Yeah,
Awesome.
and also classes about home repair. Like it doesn't have to be this house, but I was thinking of hiring like the plumber, Chris the plumber, who did the plumbing for this house. You can still see his work, in the kitchen because it's exposed. Taking people to a new house, and maybe not a house in such a scary condition, but people who want to learn this stuff, we could like learn it and practice on an actual house as well. Because if people learned how to rehab their own houses, then I think they would see more options about
So
housing and building wealth for their families.
before I forget, while I had Malik here, I wanted to talk about, like, you had a theft here in the
Yeah.
house.
Yeah.
And like he and I used to do kind of tiger team type stuff where we do essentially a security penetration test.
Mhm.
And kind of like private eye research stuff. And it's essentially spy stuff, you know?
You can call it what it is, yeah.
But I do have a degree in forensics in my defense.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's legit, yeah.
Yeah, that's legit.
That's what legitimizes it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
At least that's what we tell you. So I just wanted to know that do you have any, I mean, obviously we're gonna do something about security, but could you maybe put in words any legitimate concerns and then paint it from like practical security into building trust in the neighborhood and actually, you know, building a real community so that we're not targeted. Like I remember I brought up that thing during whatever conversation we had about having a logo that was kind of like a tag that you could say that this neighborhood is this kind of people or this kind of organization, so that it maybe gets people to realize that, okay, those people are fighting for us and those people are available and they, you know, they help give us free classes, free, you know, you get a discount card to come in the cafe because you're in the neighborhood or whatever. And there's like a logo, like kind of probably a logo that involves like an eyeball, so that it's kind of like the neighborhood watch logo. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Mhm.
but it's a little bit more underground so that it's more of a movement kind of a tag. And that way they can kind of symbolize it, you know, because there's alleyways and stuff here, and there's ways that you could sneak up on all these locations, and
Mhm.
you would have no idea unless we start putting cameras on poles out there and get like a top down. But like, do you have any practical, I mean, is there any other theft stories? Is there any other practical security concerns? And, you know, work the narrative towards figuring out how to build a good reputation and also offer anything that you see here as far as like, you've been living in neighborhoods exactly like this your whole life, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, I've only stayed in apartments here and there in my 20s that were in this kind of like affordability. And then I've stayed across the other side of Telegraph basically most of my life. So my security kind of,
Suburbanized.
yeah, it's basically like my paranoia is based on different things.
Mhm.
So I want to hear what you guys have to say about that. And then maybe you could offer some practical knowledge and we can work out a way to prevent it, and then we won't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah, I'd love to say a bit, and then also hear from Adrian because he's lived here since 2018 or thereabouts. And also when he moved into his house, I think he also had concerns, and he was giving me advice about how to interact with neighbors to sort of build trust and relationships. So when I came back for August, I didn't really know what to expect. I think a week after I stayed in the house, a lot of people came up to me. Like once they thought they knew someone was living in this house, a lot of people came up and introduced themselves to me, and they would like stop and ask me things that I didn't necessarily know how to do. Like neighbors across the street would say like, "Oh, can you do something about those power lines in the alleyway?" Because if you go in the alleyway, there are like loose power lines everywhere. Because the utility companies haven't really prioritized or like hold this neighborhood, I think, in like very high regard. And I would say like, "Oh, I don't know anything about that. I'll try calling and looking into it." And then a week after I stayed, a shed across the alleyway got burned down, and I called 911. And I don't think I had water at the time. Otherwise, I would have definitely hooked up my hose and tried to put it out. And a bunch of neighbors came out. Someone warned me, but I think they still thought of me as a squatter, which I thought was interesting. Like, why did I go through all the trouble of buying the house if in people's minds they just saw me as like another sort of like person out for grabbing resources. So the arson, Adrian told me that houses get set on fire all the time. Like the house across the street from his house got set on fire last year as well. So that made me think that family was on vacation. They later came back, and I went out and introduced myself. And there are a lot of absentee landlords. So I began to realize that, well, first of all, like it didn't really matter. Like no matter all the work I did, in other people's minds, they still saw me as kind of a squatter. And it was up to me to sort of prove to them I wasn't, right? Fix up the house, introduce myself, secure the door better, like not leave the door unlocked for any amount of time. And the theft that happened was like a laptop got stolen whenever I left the door open for about 20 minutes. I was showing a contractor around and someone came in and they didn't take anything else. I think they just looked for immediately resellable things, which was the laptop. And so I was kind of shook after that as well. And like, I still haven't rebought a new laptop. I buy things like Raspberry Pis that look like, you know, most people don't want them and don't know how to resell them. And I installed all these security cameras around the house, and I asked Jason to help me because his camera system to monitor his dad is, you know, it's very similar to what we need. But in my mind is always showing that someone cares about this house. And my concern about leaving the house at the beginning, which I've talked to Adrian and Jason about, was that if someone comes by and like leaves trash on the ground, they're kind of testing the boundaries of the house. They come back the next day and the trash is still there. They're like, okay, well, someone, like, no one lives at this house or no one cares about the house. And then, you know, maybe they break a window next time, and if there's no voice shouting back at them, you know, it could escalate from there. And so then I try not to leave anything in the house stealable. The only thing stealable of value are the appliances, and they're pretty hard to get out of the windows. That's the only thing that you can open from the inside. Yeah, so I was pretty worried whenever I left, and then I became less and less worried because I started getting busy with things here. But I asked Jason to help out with the camera situation, and Adrian has helped a lot by parking his Jeep in front and coming over every Wednesday. And yeah, so that's kind of my mind about security. Oh, and also in the future, when we renovate other houses, we're probably gonna have, you know, ideally multiple houses going at once, and so they'll all have tools in them, and not all of them will have like me living in them at night. So what we think about, I think we should also think about, we're helping improve the neighborhood. Hopefully the neighbors are glad to see us make this new house safe. But in the meantime, in the transition time, we should think about how to keep ourselves safe. And also, yeah, like Jason said, the eye, tell people we're watching, tell them that someone cares about this house and that, you know, we're here to make the neighborhood better.
They should get with us instead of opposing or being paranoid about it.
Yeah, but when you live in these type of neighborhoods, if you're not from the community, everybody is just seen as a threat.
Right, for gentrification.
Yeah, it's basically rooted in gentrification.
Mm.
They just see that they're gonna take a loss by either getting pushed out of their neighborhoods or made to live extremely uncomfortable and alienated in their own communities. Usually those are the main two things that makes people feel uncomfortable when outsiders move in.
Mm.
So you have to definitely build a relationship with whoever is, I guess you can call it the elder in the community, or whoever's respected in the neighborhood, to let them know. And then, of course, just by the way the events happen, I can already tell you're constantly being watched.
Yeah.
So if it's a drug addict, you're never going to be able to stop the crime, because, you know, a person can become a drug addict overnight. And then as soon as they high goes down, they try to catch the high again. So the first thing they're gonna do is steal the first thing they know they can sell. So, you
You
know,
think the cameras would deter them at all in that state?
if they paying attention to the cameras or not.
Yeah.
But if not, you at least know, is this an adult, which, you know, more than likely it's a drug addict, or is these some young badass kids in the neighborhood?
Yeah.
If there's some young badass kids in the neighborhood, then you need to try to talk to the people who stay in the neighborhood to know who or where are these bad kids in the neighborhood. You know, is there some type of gang situation going on? So that way you can find some type of common ground and know what to be looking out for. And then, of course, you have to have some type of relationship with law enforcement, even though in Detroit, that still is kind of like 50-50, but they're supposed to be trying to do more, what is it? How they had like a little,
Project Greenlight.
not Project Greenlight, because that's expensive, but how they have these little like remote mini police departments. They're starting to bring those back in the community. But just when you organize yourself as an organization, that's when you can go to the police department and say, hey, we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that, we're trying to bring up the property value. You know, you have to say those key words
Yeah.
that makes the police and or politicians notice what you're doing and something that's going to improve the community and the neighborhood. And when you talk about you trying to improve the community, which means you're gonna bring up the property value, you're trying to help out the kids by educating them for free and things of that sort.
They might know to send a patrol around there. a little
Yeah,
more
do
often.
routine drives, yeah.
That would help.
Mhm.
Also, I know a program in my city has a thing to where you can share just the existence of your security cameras. So for instance, if they get a crime that happens across the street and you have cameras that are facing in that direction, they know that they can contact you and see if you have any evidence that would help their case or, you know, trace it. So it's a way to basically take your camera situation and kind of put the reputation of the police behind it, knowing that they, quote, have access to it, even though they don't have real-time direct access to it.
Yeah.
I'd be a little skeptical of that though, because don't you think, I don't know, people like, I don't know, like, you gotta build a little bit of trust before you start like
Yeah,
handing over
So
stuff
that-
to the
I'm just
cops and,
mentioning it,
you know,
yeah.
proud of that. I just feel like, right, you know.
I mean, just
like,
the smallest thing you could do is just, when you have the cameras, when you have motion sensors on, you could just create a little small website and just post, these are the guys who are stealing things. And then let the community know, this is the website you can go to, you got cameras, you
people
know,
use like Nextdoor, you know, Nextdoor.
yeah, like next door.
Yeah.
Yeah. To let people know these are the troublemakers. And once enough people are aware that you can go to this website and find out who's breaking into houses, then that helps to deter some of the crime. Especially with everything but drug addicts, because, you know, drug addicts, they really don't pay attention to anybody. They live in their own little micro community. But, you know, if it's like some young kids in the neighborhood or something to that standpoint, which a lot of times that's what it is, or 9 times out of 10, that's where they take those stolen items too. You know, you can make it known that, yeah, you know, you steal laptops. You know, we can trace this laptop the minute you log in. And, you know, that's grand larceny. So you're gonna be doing a 3 to 5. So, you know, you have to use a little bit of social engineering. And, you know, you got sites like, I think it's called Google Host. They have free hosting for WordPress websites. So you can easily go up a website, post videos, or just screenshots of the videos, the guys who basically look sketchy or who you see on your camera that's standing around for too long, and make everybody know and pass out free flyers.
they're talking about building a mesh network to share Wi-Fi with the neighbors.
Mhm.
Maybe we could build like a Raspberry Pi device that has longer, always connected, and that way they can access the cameras that are local to the community.
Yeah.
And maybe they would be more apt to have a camera put on their property
Mhm.
that's tied into the mesh network, or, yeah, tied into the mesh network. So that you could make a mesh surveillance network and just kind of create a situational awareness among the neighbors. Do you think that would actually
Yeah,
help, like people would want to participate, and that would actually allow them to trust us a little bit more?
yeah, definitely. Because, you know, nobody wants to have their stuff broken into.
Yeah.
And the police response around here, 9 times out of 10, is probably slow to 0. A friend of mine, he had his house broken into. They stole his PlayStation, his Xbox. I was able to find the IP address, the guy who stole it. I gave it to a friend. I was like, yeah, get this to the police. He called the police department. They said, we have murders to worry about, and hung up the phone.
Yeah.
And he was just like, what do I do now? Contact the sergeant. Called the sergeant. They never transferred the message, or he didn't ever want to answer the phone. I was like, well, you need to just go up there and quit being scared. But he didn't want to go up there. He was like, skip it. I just buy a new Xbox and PlayStation.
Plus, I don't know if it's like vigilante justice where we could trace the IP and then go and like, dude, why are you stealing my shit?
Yeah, you
That
can.
would be badass. That would have the fear of God in it for sure.
I know that, I don't want to mention that.
I was about to say, you said a little bit too much on the recorded combo.
That's right. It is recorded after all. I'll blur it out. Yeah, I'll remove all the names.
Yeah, editing software is always handy.
We'll save that for when you get back.
Yeah, no, but the advice is definitely appreciated. I definitely want to give to the community, and I know like even if something is stolen for me, it's not a good interaction to go around and sort of ask the neighbors if they've seen anything, because, you know, they don't know you yet. And
Mhm.
you come across as accusing, like, you know, like, why do you assume that we would know anything about it? And yeah, I mean, I would love to give first and sort of have it be a community resource, like a neighborhood watch, for example. Like, they're worried about their houses too. They've had
Mhm.
more years to sort of make the porches nice, and you'll see the houses have like lamps like on the lawn, and they have a lot of people living at the house, so they're worried about people coming in through the alleyway from the fish and chip store and the liquor store also. I mean,
Mhm.
they're just as concerned about it as I am, and I definitely would like us to be able to help each other keep
You know, I
the neighborhood
think-
safer.
Maybe another thing that this cafe idea would provide for the neighborhood is like the sharing of intelligence. Like, for instance, you mentioned earlier that one of your neighbors complained about down power lines in the alleyway.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if they're not really on the internet, or they're, you know, they have all their time taken up by a job just to survive, you know, they don't really have time to research what to do about A, B, and C in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Whereas somebody sitting in a cafe waiting for somebody to buy a coffee has a computer right there, you know, he can kind of like, oh, well, I'll look into that, you know, and then tell them about the next day. Well, I found this, and I called this, and maybe DTE is gonna come out, you know, you found the right people. Providing informational resources into like an informational desert here could actually help, you know.
Yeah.
Plus, there's always a problem of, you know, just giving somebody, here's internet access, it's magic, you know. It's like you have no idea where to even begin, what's possible, and then there's always like the familiarity bias or confirmation bias, whatever you call it, where you only really can Google words that you know,
Mhm.
and unless you have somebody that's you're sharing a culture with that you're unfamiliar with,
Mhm.
you know, like hacker culture, that's exactly how it is. You know, you go in, you find all these different acronyms and things, and you research about that, and you build little bridges to new pieces of information and new entire, you know, subcategories or subdisciplines of technology. It's exactly like that for all knowledge. And unless they have access to us as people, you know, to like help them out with those kinds of things, I think that that would work to build trust very rapidly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Start off with a flyer with the information
Yeah.
and just leave it on people's doors.
What, like Wi-Fi password or something?
I mean, just what we're trying to do in a neighborhood, period. Because, you know, everybody's not gonna be around all the time,
We're gonna need.
but everybody's gonna get their mail.
So we're gonna need help translate this, because if I put it in my language, you know what I mean? Like, how are you gonna know it? You know it, but you know the people around here.
Mhm.
How are they gonna know? How are you gonna be able to bridge that limited thing where they don't have the technical language to understand what is possible, or what it actually is, what it means?
I mean, everybody pretty much understands neighborhood watch.
Okay.
Yeah,
So you
and
want-
I mean, free Wi-Fi, or, you know, if we were to offer internet, which I hope to do, it would be installing an antenna, you know, on their property, and that might be unusual at first.
Did you see that Lights documentary, or the Motherboard or whatever? Where Motherboard was,
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
tracking-
they
Yeah.
interviewed Detroit's Equitable Internet Project, right? So there is a mesh project here already. It's in a neighborhood, you know, far from LaSalle Garden, and I contacted them, but I think they were overloaded with requests.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would still love to work with them, but also, you know, we can get started right now. We have 2 mesh antenna here in the house, and
yeah, I saw in there. In the
yeah,
file.
no, and I would love to just post the password everywhere. I mean, like yeah, to have open Wi-Fi, so anyone even just like passing by. There are people who like sit on the wall out by the alleyway sometimes, and yeah, I have no problem with sharing internet access to.
Yeah, we could actually help them get free internet, because I know Detroit, a friend of mine told me Detroit has, if you have a minimum income, I believe below 20,000 or something,
Mhm.
you can get free internet from Comcast, or it's like $5 a month. And most people don't know about this.
Yeah.
So just small things like that, where people can learn, wow, I can get free internet, or it's gonna cost me $5, $10. You know, they'll be appreciative of that. And then like, or use hours from
Yeah.
9 to 5, such and such and such. So if your kid is in school, use this to log into our network, do your homework. We'll be having a cafe soon, such et cetera. Free music, free meals, such et cetera. So that way they feel that you can be trusted and they have some type of premise to base that on.
Right.
You know, you're assisting them getting free internet. They have a free internet you can access. Anybody who's doing sketchy stuff in the neighborhood, here's the cameras of the people that's seen to be doing something sketchy in the neighborhood. You know, you have a relationship with the police department.
Plus that bulletin board at every cafe, it's like the local food board that has all the local people offering, this lady offers massage services, this offer,
Mhm.
this guy fixes bikes, all that kind of like keep it in the circle, to where it's not always like the money leaving the neighborhood
Yeah.
all the time, every time somebody has a little problem.
Yeah, like a neighborhood Craigslist.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a brief interruption. There's a light in the dining room, so I don't want you to stand and sit in the dark. It's
Oh.
there you go.
Oh, wow.
There you go. This is like even more cypherpunk if everyone's just like hooded faces in the dark. Have you guys eaten yet? Because I would love to order dinner, and if you're going to be around for the next like 40 minutes, then you can get takeout for the house. How are people doing, like food wise?
Yeah, but I could also joke.
Yeah, is there anything? Yeah, so vegan food. Yeah, if you have any vegan food recommendations that are like in Hamtramck or Detroit, I can bring it up on
Yeah,
Seamless or
Village.
Grubhub.
You ever had Young Village?
Oh, yeah, I've met him a couple of times. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't stand the spice, but besides the spice, yeah, everything else is definitely working. Oh, yeah. it
Oh,
is.
it's too spicy for you?
I can't handle it.
It was
I'm not
hot
gonna go
earlier.
there.
I think you can ask them to turn it down to like 0 stars, 1 star.
Yeah, they kind of just do things at a certain level. They don't really have too much change. It's just like, here it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up eating crazy spice. So for me, that's not really spice. But yeah, I did grow up eating
Spicy chicken from Popeyes is too hot. And I'm just
Yeah.
being serious.
Then there's
I can't
Harmony Garden. You ever been to Harmony Garden? They're like, that place has really nice Middle Eastern, kind of like Mediterranean food.
Oh, Harmony Garden.
Yeah, it's like over here. Yeah, I like that place.
I've heard of it. I'm not sure if I ate there before, so I haven't been eating anything.
What do you feel like it is?
Yeah. That's been nice.
Yeah.
We eat all this food. It's been ethnic since day one.
Yeah, Adrian, do you mind starting an order and then I'll reimburse you? Just because.
Sure. Yeah, I guess I wonder if it's gonna be like a lot.
Yeah, just so that you'll get the notifications, because I think last time, I'd like to have dinner every week on Wednesday meetings, but last time the driver like left it on the porch, and I don't think Adrian that you knew it until like 20 minutes later. So the food is probably getting cold.
Yeah.
Like DoorDash.
Let's leave it and
Yeah,
go.
just take a picture of it.
I'm supposed to, I'll leave in the note, call when you're outside.
Oh yeah, but it was my number and not Adrian's number, so it was a little.
I like that place.
I definitely don't want to be the bottleneck.
What do you get?
You guys want to get Harmony Garden?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, well, I'm interested, Malik. There's a 60-year-old black man named Curtis here. He's here with his sister, Penny and Curtis, and they have a great story. Like, her mission in life is to make sure every child of her mother and father has their own house in their adult life. So they're here to learn how to build houses. And Curtis's goal is to teach 3D printing in Ghana. And I haven't talked to him too much to know what his interest is there, but he has pretty deep knowledge about like induction furnaces and how to smelt metal from iron ore that you can just like find in nature. You find rocks and pretty amazing stuff. And
See, I just
yes,
wanna see it.
and you said that you were interested in leaving the United States and maybe going elsewhere, and I assumed maybe it was somewhere that you felt like you could help more, or that and so I was curious what kind of places you were considering, or like
Places I'm considering is where it's warm year round. I don't never need another winter, see snow for the rest of my life. So
I hear you.
as long as it's warm year round, I don't really care. So, you know, it can be an island country. I have a friend of mine who has an 800-hectare cacao farm.
Wow.
And I was actually telling him about open source project and how you can transformer tractors into everything and whatnot.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it just blew his mind. So, you know, because right now, he won't let any outsiders take his family's land because, you know, they steal all the mineral wealth.
Yeah.
And because he won't let anybody use the minerals on his family's land, he can't rent, buy, or lease any type of heavy machinery. So he can't do anything in terms of removing the minerals from his family's land. So they just grow cacao. And I was actually trying to get cacao shipped here to Detroit because I know the family who owns, it's called Rocky's Peanut Factory in Eastern Market. They was interested in buying the cacao from me in large burlap bags, but Ghanaian law states that you can only export cacao if you're exporting in metric tons.
Holy shit.
That's
Yeah,
You're
that's
so
a weird
that's how they control the colonial market of making chocolate. If it's not metric tons and you can't show a bill of sale, you can't export because, you know,
oh my God.
in Eastern Market, you know, the store is, it's not that big, but I know they had, since they roasted peanuts,
Yeah.
since the 30s and 40s, I know they wanted to roast that cacao and then make their own chocolate, but as for right now, we can't get any out.
So here's another stupid idea I have.
Sounds good to you.
Yeah. All ideas welcome. Let's hear it.
If we ever get a cafe up and running, have like
Oh, yeah, that's
a
good.
neighborhood podcast, and then also,
Falafel, like falafel.
Oh, I love falafel.
do you think it'd be a viable idea to have a podcast along the lines of the things we've been discussing?
Falafel and then like.
To basically, because you have the network actually into Ghana and the people that are actually living there.
Mhm.
And we have all of the knowledge that we have, and that he's there, he's collecting all of that, and he has a social network of those people. I just want to like spread kind of situational awareness in the world
Mhm,
of all of the different, you know, just how things work.
mhm.
I listen to all of these different podcasts that, you know, you'll be 2 hours in and they'll say one sentence that just blows your whole mind apart, you know, because it's like, I never realized that was, you know, but until you actually hear it in conversation, then you don't even know what to Google, you know? So it's the same thing as, you know, anybody who doesn't have internet, then suddenly they have it. I learn new things all the time that, you know, broaden my horizons in every genre of thinking and thought and you could possibly imagine. So there's got to be a way to package this to where. it
If we
actually
did a
works.
podcast, it would have to be video. Because,
I can do that.
you know, everybody just rather watch a video all day. I really don't know too many people who just listen to audio podcasts.
Yeah.
But if they can see a video and see something in the physical form, you know, even if it's an object, like I used to speak at a lot
I'm
of
proving it right now.
Detroit schools.
Doing this, you know?
Yeah, when I used to
They
speak
wanna
at
see it.
schools to kids, I
Exactly.
used to bring a drone. When I was in forensics, I used to bring homicide photos.
Whoa.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
this school?
I mean,
Graphic
so
stuff.
they had me speaking at the schools where there was the baddest kids. This is a school that they send kids to before they send them to jail. So this is the last chance for you to not be an ass before they lock you up.
Here's some
So
murder.
you had to scare them.
So yeah, I'm gonna give them the real. I'm not about to sugarcoat anything. You wanna sell crack? Well, you're gonna see me, or, and your body, your family is gonna find you like this, and then I show them a slide. In real life death, when you get shot, it's not pretty like it is on television. You know, people die and their eyes closed, they die in weird positions, they're leaning over odd objects, the environment is filthy. And you know, do you want your family to find you looking like this? This guy was found 7 days later with worms coming out of his eyes. So, you know, I give them the realism without all the CSI Hollywood foolishness that they portray on television. And every class I went to, I may have to speak in 2 classes. By the time I finish, I have to speak at 5 because other kids wanted to see the presentation. And you know, flying a drone isn't easy. And always it was the baddest kid in class who always think he can do everything. So I was like, yeah, you can fly the drone, but if you crash it, I'm taking your lunch. And they always crash the drone, and then I'll give the lunch to whoever wanted in the class. So, you have to give them something that's really gonna get their attention and something that they can relate to. Just listening to a person's voice, for the most, being honest, only really geeks really listen to audio podcasts.
Sure.
Unless, they talking about something freaky or extremely criminal where they can make some quick money or something. But other than that, people wants to see something and then they can better relate to it and you can more so get their attention than just listening. So I believe a podcast would be effective, but it would have to be something visual, something that they can see.
Yeah, 100%. I watch a lot of YouTube videos as well.
Yeah.
And the podcast I listen to only like when I'm driving. Like I did a lot of driving from Detroit down to Missouri recently, so I listen to podcasts then. But usually I'm not just like sitting around listening only. It's usually while I'm doing something else, like to fill the time, or audiobooks to learn something. So yeah, no, I'm down for it. I'm still trying to find the format. Like when I first moved to Detroit, I would take a lot of Ubers because I didn't have a car back then, and I would just tell people like, oh, I'm here because I'm interested in housing and buying a house, and they would tell me like the greatest stories. Like they would say like, oh, my mom would invite people with drug addiction into our home, and she would help them clean up and help them shop for clothes for job interviews so they could like get their life together. And then they would tell me stories about houses getting burned down by people who just wanted the insurance money, or people who wanted them demolished. Like for whatever reason, they would just like set houses on fire in the city, which I guess happens. And yeah, so I thought that would be a thing maybe that would get people's attention, or that we could do sustainably. So if everyone has a story about houses, or they have their ideal situation, like what kind of house would you like to live in, or if you could, would you help your family get a house, or what do you want in a house, what do you want in a neighborhood, do you want to eat with your neighbors, do you want to garden with them, or yeah, anything like that. So that's one idea for a podcast.
Yeah, anything where you can actually educate somebody where it's entertaining, or teach them something that they just don't even know about, like the internet thing I just mentioned with Comcast.
Yeah.
No, I'm on the internet at least about 15 to 18 hours a day, besides homework, just doing research and geek shit. So I didn't ever know if Comcast had anything where people who make below a certain amount could get free internet, or they're paying $5 a month.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you have to also take into account in poor communities, a lot of people can't read, or they can't read well. So, you have to say, you can go to the site, you can download the form you need to fill out. If you need help, come to our cafe. We'll help you fill out the paperwork on Wednesdays from 5 to 9, etc. And that's really how you get the trust of the neighborhood. And by doing things like that, that's how you can also deter a lot of the crime, because they'd be like, yeah, we're about to go over here and see what we can steal. No, don't mess with them guys. They help me get internet. Go take your ass somewhere down the street.
Oh,
so,
yeah.
You have to have those type of community-based relationships. And when you study critical criminology, what you always find out is that there's always a problem within the community or a family that causes people to commit crime. You don't have enough to eat, you don't have a proper place to live. But when you give people solutions, that actually helps to deter crime. And when you actually try to work with the community instead of trying to just preach to the community, it's a lot more effective. So if we actually use those principles that is talked about in academic papers but not discussed publicly, we can actually be effective, and our business model will be a lot better than a lot of other groups and organizations. Because most of the time they just want to preach to people, but they don't actually try to show them anything. Like when me and Jason first was talking about everything we was doing, I decided to go into a graduate program because it's all about how to run a business. Most businesses aren't successful. You have different types, nonprofits, for-profits, governmental, corporate, and it's all about how do you do a grant proposal? What exactly is a grant? What's the requirements of a grant? What's advanced program development? And I found out, for me to really find out about this, they want you to pay anywhere from $200 to $500 a month. And everybody feed off your ideas. So I was like, skip that. I just went to the doctoral program and now I know all this myself.
Yeah.
So when I was just speaking to the guys, I was saying, oh yeah, what you're doing is referred to a co-op. You want to join partnership. So what you want to do, the first thing you want to do is create your organization and then state your bylaws. So that way, when you actually implement what we're talking about, you also have some piece of paper so that when you have parties that's interested, they can see that the organization is there on paper and then it's being executed physically. And that's how you bring in people who may actually want to spend money or philanthropists and whatnot. Because if you do everything, but you don't have any paperwork to support it, how do they know they can trust you with the money? Or how do they know you even know how to manage the money? Because of course it comes into the books. Do you know how to do the paperwork? Do you know how to do the books? Are you being transparent? And overall, the main model that they discuss nowadays with businesses is the business sustainable?
Can you hear okay, Paul?
If the money can't be received, how can the business support itself if no funds are coming in? And we have a model where we're actually implementing exactly what's supposed to be the current model that's supposed to be used today.
Mhm.
It's easy to not only find people who may be interested in doing donations or joining partnerships, but at the same time, we may be able to get resources where we can find out who has the grants that we're looking for, because the money is out there. Like I remember I was telling Jason how I said that most people don't know that Puerto Rico, they have a lot of venture capitalists and they're setting up their own crypto network. So there's a lot of places in Puerto Rico where you can actually catch a cab with Bitcoin. You can buy food with Bitcoin. We can't even do that here in Detroit.
No.
And then they're trying to go literally off the grid because the government allowed these NGOs to say they was gonna fix their infrastructure, and they didn't, and they ended up losing like $500 million. And they said, okay, well, we live in an island country off the water, we can use hydropower. We get all this sun, we can use solar power. So they're trying to create a green technology infrastructure, and they have available, I believe it's $300 million in grants for anybody who wants to do small, medium, or large sustainable farming
Mhm.
in Puerto Rico, so that they don't have to import food in, they can grow it all right there.
Oh, absolutely. Self-sufficient.
So, you know, it's a lot of money that's out there, but if you're not in the know and if you're not networking with anybody, you never learn about these things.
That's why we should do the podcast. We need people like this to actually do it and sit down and.
Yeah, so to be honest, when you was asking where would I like to go?
Yeah.
Because of crypto and sustainability and all these millions of dollars in grant money just to do sustainable agriculture, doesn't matter whether it's a small, medium, or large farm. They give you the money.
Did you say Cuba? Is that where this is happening?
Puerto Rico,
Puerto Rico. Okay.
yeah, Puerto Rico.
Damn, I want to go to Puerto Rico now too. No, that sounds nice. I mean, definitely would like to use crypto more, because I think right now people think of it as a gambling machine. Like if you walk into a gas station, you'll see a Bitcoin ATM. And so the level of consciousness most people have is like, this is a thing that could go up and down, and you can play it like a lotto ticket. But the promise is more. I mean, like, for example, like in Puerto Rico, as people like being able to pay their neighbors directly without having to go through a bank, without setting up a bank account, or they can do it in areas where there is no bank, or you know, they may want to have their privacy and like not have people track what they're spending money on. So yeah, we'd love to educate people in those areas as well. Something you said also, yeah, would you recommend that we be a nonprofit? Because I definitely want to make our finances transparent. Like right now, what we spend money on mostly is this house, and soon it'll be like related projects, like we want to build a greenhouse, or you know, internet equipment to share internet with the neighbors. We definitely, you know, I would love to make all of it transparent in real time, so you can tell like every day you can just like refresh and see what we're spending money on. And so if you want to donate to us, you can see where it's going, or you can ask us questions like, but what would make you trust an organization in terms of like being able to handle finances, or being successful at applying for grants? right now we don't need grants, but you know, I definitely want to remove that area of funding because that's like a way of connecting and working with other people is applying for grants and telling the world who you are and what you stand for.
Well, as it relates to just communities of this type.
Yeah.
Anything other than a nonprofit, it just sets off red flags for people. Because if it's not nonprofit, then it's for profit. And of course, when people hear, oh, this is a company coming into our neighborhood trying to make money, that just sets a bad tone. Although you could set up a nonprofit and then have that nonprofit owned by a shell company that's a for-profit organization.
Yeah,
So,
it's not foolproof.
Yeah. So, you can still do both, or you can do one, but you definitely want to have it to where you have access to more resources. And everybody knows the easiest way to do that is a nonprofit organization. But at the same time, you have co-ops and, they have hybrids. So it was really dictated on the type of business you want to run and what is exactly stated in your bylaws. What exactly is your purpose? What is your mission statement? What do you hope to achieve? Is it sustainable? Those are the main things that anybody that's looking at any business really wants to know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason why I want to make finances transparent so that people can see that we're sustainable. And the only reason I wouldn't want to be a nonprofit is that, sometimes nonprofits have a bad reputation as like wasting people's money, right? Like having a high bureaucratic overhead, a lot of
Exactly, and that's literally what most of them do. Like the Cancer Foundation. I have a few friends of mine who, actually my girlfriend, she's a cancer survivor. But I have to tell them, that the Cancer Foundation only donate 3%. Everything else is administration and advertisement and everything else.
Yeah.
So, you could just get out of high school and know how to do graphics well. It's their relative and they pay them $150,000 a year. And that's media and marketing. Come on now, be serious.
Yeah.
This guy just got out of high school, and that's basically what the mayor here in Detroit did. He created these artificial job positions, and every job starts at $80,000 a year on up. And it was in the Detroit Free Press, I believe.
But that's taxpayer money.
Yeah.
$80,000.
$80,000. Yeah. So it's all about what exactly is your business model.
Yeah.
And are you going to be transparent?
Yeah, well, we try to be all the time. Right now, the business model is, we fix up houses and we sell them at cost.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to keep them in a land trust to be permanently affordable. So that's, we want to restrict the resale value so that, the house, when you buy it, is yours to live in for you and your family as long as you want as your primary residence. So it's not like a vacation rental. It's not like going to be an Airbnb house. But when it comes time to sell, if you ever want to sell, the price would not be set by the market because, you could sell it to a Chinese billionaire or a foreign speculator from the outside. And then all the work that we put into this house, like the first generation, it would be over because you would be able to sell it. And so that's why we want to restrict the resale value. And the way land trusts do it is to separate the ownership of the land from the house on top. The trust owns the land and they lease it to you for like 99 years. People are living longer, so it'll probably be like 115 years pretty soon. Like we want it to be yours to live in. And then when it comes time for it to have a new owner, we want them to have the same opportunity to buy a house affordably. And we presented this to other friends who were interested, and they definitely wanted to improve the house and be able to get money back for it, right? Like if you remodel it and get a new bathroom, you want to sell it at the highest price because you invested in your own home. And so that's why some people don't like land trusts, and we want to balance the two concerns.
Yeah, you definitely want to add in your bylaws that if you sell anybody a house, that they'll be living in it for at least 10, 20 years, and they have to sell it at a certain percentage at market value or only maybe 5% above market value. So that way you don't be giving away houses and then the next person, they're trying to be a venture capitalist.
Yeah.
And then that corrupts your whole business model and it makes it look like it's you, but it's not, but it's actually the people you sell it to. But of course, the people you sell it to won't get the attention. It's going to be the people who sold it to them that get the attention.
Yeah, I see.
But for the most part, it sounds like it's a nonprofit organization. Just, if you just say this, what we're talking about to anybody and what we're trying to do in terms of the community, the neighborhood, and improvements and affordable housing, all of that literally sounds like a nonprofit organization.
Yeah.
But
No,
some nonprofits are owned by for-profit organizations. But that's all dictated on how you write up the paperwork and what's all in your bylaws. So, you know, most people don't know that many nonprofits are owned by for-profit organizations. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It's kind of upsetting if you think about it.
It only really gets sketchy when they find out that it's owned by a shell or shelf corporation.
Yeah.
And even though shell and shelf corporations aren't illegal, many of them work in gray areas, so they're considered unethical.
Yeah, I know that a lot of like non-government organizations and nonprofits, they set up these kind of, you know, convoluted nonsense to basically go into a place, install infrastructure using local labor, and then they're using it as almost like a straw to suck up labor out of a local place that's a super cheap place to actually sell it to Western markets.
Yeah.
So that's how all these like Nike factories get set up in the Philippines and places like this. Or in like that's how like a lot of the mining towns in the middle of Africa get set up, you know, and suddenly they have roads and electricity, and the whole thing is just to extract diamonds or something.
Yep, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually what I did my paper on in grad school, was the organizations of the blood diamond market. Who owns the blood diamond market? You know, we already know that certain countries and the beers, and we hear about the drug lords and all this, but who owns them? And that's what I wrote my paper on. Because, you know, you can't get guns in the middle of Africa, just like we can here in Detroit. You just can't go to the store. However, they get AK-47s and they give the kids cocaine with gunpowder mixed in. How are you getting cocaine in the middle of Africa? So, you know, that lets you know that it's some big players involved, and these people are pretty organized. And when they don't get cocaine, they get heroin. Yeah, so, you know, there's a lot of gray area that's not being discussed. And that's one of the things that me and XDR researched. We found out one of the biggest players was this guy from India. So yeah, it's everything is really interesting once you get behind the story of these organizations. But it sounds like what you want to do is like a nonprofit. And at least just on the surface, if you're a nonprofit compared to being a for-profit, if you're a for-profit in an impoverished community like this, yeah, it's gonna automatically send people in the red flag type of mentality.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. I'm definitely, after hearing that, I'm definitely leaning more.
But it can still be a for-profit organization, because your nonprofit can be owned by a for-profit. So you can still do both, or you can do either or.
What about a nonprofit that functions as an incubator to spin up for-profits that are owned by the people that the nonprofit helps?
Okay, say that again one more time.
That was a little hard for me to follow.
Yeah, he got me that time, okay.
So like the nonprofit would be there to educate and kind of get materials and modern, you know, technology and stuff into a community in order to train them up to figure out what they want to do with the technology, and then kind of like train them up on enterprise and finance and then all the practicality so that they can do what they're interested in as a business, you know.
So basically, you would educate underrepresented populations or marginalized populations to be more self-sufficient in America, well, not America, just say the world job market.
Could be anywhere,
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah.
and that's legal. Even if there's like an agreement that the nonprofit, you know, fostered this education for free, and where does it work? Like if those for-profit corporations that spun out of a nonprofit, because some of these things, like we would probably be involved in them directly as like adult supervision to get teenagers, you know, producing something or something like that. How does it, you know, are they allowed to contribute back to the nonprofit? Or is it all gonna be?
That all depends on the business model. You
is
can
it
if
all
you want.
legal? I mean, is it a standard practice that happens?
You really don't know because you have to really study that company's business model. What exactly are they doing? And are they partnering with corporations? And are these corporations actually helping the nonprofit, or are they just helping the nonprofit enough to make a profit themselves?
What's that, what is that incubator thing that's like the Silicon Valley one? It's like Y Combinator, I think is the name.
Yeah, yeah,
Heard of
exactly.
that?
Yeah, it is Y Combinator.
Okay,
That's the most famous one.
are they nonprofit? Do you know? offhand?
Definitely not. They are the most for-profit. They
Okay.
take like 10 to 12% of every company that they invest in.
So that kind of model, then, where they spin up businesses in order to actually have a piece of it. But
Yeah,
obviously they have a stake in it and they're helping those businesses.
They actually had that on Undercover Billionaire
Yeah.
this past season. It was a company that what was that guy's name? The producer for Missy Elliott, his wife,
Timberland?
Timberland's wife, she basically made these energy drinks that was helped to improve your health, and in impoverished communities. I forgot where it was at, Colorado or somewhere. And she basically was marketing her business to see if she could get donations to help jumpstart her business. She wanted at least 10,000 or 20,000 on up. And one of the partners came in. What they do is they give donations to businesses for a percentage of that business. So of course, that would be a for-profit business, but it's to aid businesses who don't have the means and the resources to open up that business themselves. So that's basically what you would refer to there. Yeah, so that's a honorable nonprofit organization.
yeah.
I mean, for-profit
For-profit,
organization.
Yeah, yeah,
that's-
most of the organizations we would want to work with, like NACA or Detroit Community Wealth Fund, are nonprofits. And yeah, what you pointed out earlier is that if most of the organizations you want to work with, or that would want to work with you, are nonprofits, that's probably a good sign that you might want to consider being a nonprofit as well. And the only reason I'm not already, or we're not already a nonprofit, is that I would want to invest some amount of money in like researching and improving technology, and that that's probably better off as just a separate venture entirely. Yeah, and then also I wanted to make a neighborhood investment. So this is something that, like, the first community land trust was started in Georgia, in Atlanta, for Black farmers in the 70s, and they found that like owning land was the keystone to sort of like building wealth for their family, or sort of enabling retaining sort of like voting rights and food sovereignty and sort of everything else started with the land, and it was difficult for them to get. So there's an example of a building that they bought together, and neighbors could invest, I think as little as $10 or maybe even $1 in this building, and they owned like shares of this building. And I don't know how they set it up, whether they were a nonprofit or not, but it was something where when the neighborhood came up, you weren't just watching the neighborhood get gentrified by these strangers. Like, you had a share of this building, and when you improved the building, everyone sort of felt like they were prospering together.
It
So
sounds like a for-profit co-op.
okay, I can see that. Sure. So there are co-ops, like there was a food co-op. I was a member of a food co-op in Brooklyn where I lived, and you all had mutual benefits. So you all wanted affordable food together. And it sounds like maybe we want to starting a housing co-op, and that's not a new thing. People do housing co-ops, but it's kind of maybe a sweat equity model where people can take out a loan together and be like responsible as a group for making the mortgage payments, but they own their homes. They could exchange sweat equity, like they could help each other fix their houses. Yeah, like for example, like this house that we're in right now, if we had a group of people, they could help fix up the house, and then they would know that, well, one person's turn will be to own this house at the end of it, and they would, you know, pay back the group, and then the next house we all work on together is going to go to someone else's house, and you would have to set up the contracts, I think, or just to build a personal relationship and have the contracts where you trust that your turn is going to come up, and that, you know, the work that you put in is going to be returned to you. Like old barn raisings, you know, the Amish they would all come together and help one neighbor raise their barn, and then you knew that when your neighbor came to ask for you next time, like you owe them help because they helped you raise your barn. And that was kind of informal. Like you lived in a small community and you couldn't escape like public shame or embarrassment if you skated on your obligation to your neighbors. And we would like to do something, I think, more formal that people will trust, but then, you know, also to build relationships where that can happen.
I'd like to keep it to where it's actually fun to hang out and do those kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, if you do the nonprofit and the for-profit together, have them named completely different, then it seems like you already have a conglomerate of organizations that's coming together for the common good of the community, even though it's actually owned by everybody who's a part of that community. But on paper, it just looks like it's a bunch of different organizations coming together.
Yeah, I definitely want to.
Yeah, it looks better, you know, organization A, organization B, organization C, this is a nonprofit, these are two for-profits. We're coming together for community sustainability and agricultural development in urban areas. So, you know, your mission statement and your purpose are all working together between these different organizations for an ethical humanitarian cause. So as long as everybody is committed to doing what they're supposed to do and it's done, it makes everybody look good. And it makes all those different organizations that you created look good as well, compared to just one organization.
Yeah, no, we definitely want, well, I mean, like the thing that most nonprofit foundations want is to show that they're making a difference, that they're spending money well. And sometimes they'll spend a lot of money just to be able to claim credit, even if they're not doing anything well, right? Like the UN has all these NGOs and they spend a lot of money in Africa, and the data sample is very spotty, but they claim credit for it. Anyway, these foundations feel good about spending the money. So we definitely don't want to fall into that.
Yeah, that's why I use the term ethical.
Yeah. No, for sure. Yeah.
Before my experiences with nonprofit, like through, you know what I'm talking about, it all just seems so masturbatory. It's like we barely have an organization up and running. You know, the workbench consists of, you know, a table in my garage, and then, you know, that's where all the crazy, you know, nonprofit organizational world-changing technology is coming from. And meanwhile, you know, this vaporware is somehow joining even a larger conglomerate of nonprofits, and it's just like website after website after website. It's like it all looks great, but you have a technical question like, okay, listen, we're trying to do this. We're tapping the whole network now. Look at this website. It's got 50 members of all over the world, and Guam and Cuba and everywhere else. All right, great. I want to solve this technical problem, and you reach out with this one idea, and it's all deaf ears. You know, I don't even understand what it is besides a series of video conferences and websites, you know, and maybe some paperwork somewhere. You know, I would assume somebody actually has like a 501c3 or something like that. That's what we were trying to do. But even that, it's like, what are you? I like kind of this approach where we're actually in a place already, and there's something actually happening, you know, before all of the, you know, justification for it. Like at some point we have to actually spend time together working on something real, you know, and how do we actually get to that point and make it actually work with the paperwork, that it's not just a waste of time to even file the paperwork or create a website or anything else.
I mean, it's never a waste of time as long as you're being effective. Just like when I created Fractoratics for us to do whatever we wanted to do. It's an think tank, nonprofit think tank that specializes in STEM, sustainability, and education.
Wait, Malik, can
So-
you say the name of your nonprofit again?
Oh, it's called Fractal Radix.
Fractal Radix.
Website is called fractalradix.com.
Okay.
So basically, as it's written up, it's just a think tank that consults in all these different areas as relates to STEM education, statistics. We do archaeology, anthropology, it's decentralized because by me being a college student and going to grad school, I find that all of these friends of mine got all these specializations in their degrees, but everybody is just stuck teaching. So I was thinking, well, what if we actually decide we don't want to teach anymore and we want to do something else? We need to have something that we can lean on and say, oh yeah, we also involved in this. So it's a decentralized think tank. As projects come about, that's who we contact. We contact their specialization. Some of them worked in private, some worked in government, some are worked in education. I used to work for the forensics lab when I was doing my internship, which is rare. So, everybody has their own specialization, and based on whether it's STEM, whether it's just straight up education, whether it's sustainability, we can pretty much do it all. So we was trying to get a building, but it didn't ever fall through. We got hit with gentrification. We're trying to get a building for 3.5 years, and our cap was 80,000, and the building was 68,000, and they just sold it about 3 to 6 months ago. Tried to get that building for 3 years,
Yeah.
and then somebody just snatched it up. So and we was basically going to live in that building
Mhm.
and sustainably do everything we need to do, all the geek stuff that we like to do. I was gonna do a vegan deli as the sustainable model. And then, teach kids like what Jason is talking about, teach them about Arduinos and Raspberry Pis and building 3D printers and, teaching them graphics and art. And then when the kids want to eat, we give them good vegan food. And, because we're actually doing something for the community, our business model will be sustainable because, my vegan food tastes good. And of course, if the kids eat food and they like it, the parents is gonna want to taste it, and then the parents will come support it. And when I did the market research, there is no vegan deli nowhere in the whole state of Michigan.
Yeah.
So-
no, I want to come to your vegan deli. That sounds like an amazing idea. Yeah, the people who sold that building really robbed everyone of a chance of delicious vegan food. Do you know how much they sold it for by any chance?
They sold it for 80,000. The 80,000 that they could have got from me 3 years ago, because a friend of mine, she's a professor at Howard,
Okay.
and she said, whatever the rent, I'll pay half. So I was like, oh, okay, that's easy. And then I had another friend, he said he'll pay half and he'll stay there, which is Johnny. So, our rent would have been paid for. Only thing we had to do is do the stuff that we do all the time in our house
Mhm.
in just one building.
Yeah.
And all the money from the state, is there because there's crazy money for STEM. There's money for education. We're teaching the kids for free. But, when you can't get a building, that pretty much destroyed all of that.
Yeah. No, so it's the same. Like the land or the building is the beginning of all kind of
It is.
wealth building or community activism. So
Yeah, because you need space, and then you need to put all your equipment in that space.
Yeah.
And then do the work. So, Jason, he's pretty much pushed out of everything in terms of space, maximizing all his space.
mhm.
I really don't have too much space. My laboratory equipment stays up under my table because I really don't have any place to set it up.
Mm.
So, I was trying to find a location that was multi-level so that we can live in it, work in it, and educate in it, and be that example of a business model that's 100% sustainable by actually being beneficial to the community without all the fluff. Because I've looked at every last STEM program in this state, and they're not teaching these kids nothing. I mean, like Hazel Park, they had a wind energy solar program over the summer. Hazel Park, that's not a wealthy community.
Yeah.
Who can afford a $40,000 wind turbine? I mean, come on now, what's the whole point of this? They basically just getting STEM money just to spend it. And like you mentioned earlier, they spend all their money in administration, but in terms of effectiveness, it's low.
Maybe we could borrow some of Marchin's business idea to where you use kind of like, I forget that phrase you used to describe it perfectly. And that was my suspicion as to what it was. It's like the root word was tourism in the phrase you used.
Oh, maker tourism.
Maker tourism.
But that, well, no, I mean, so this is my term. I don't think Martin would describe it. He may not even.
No, definitely not. I understand. But like,
Because we're the customers. Like we're apprentices. We're coming here to learn, and we're meant to be partners and collaborators to start businesses based on this technology,
Yeah.
and sort of bring this message and this philosophy to the
But I
world.
think
But you know,
if we had-
we're paying to be here, and we're definitely, you know, in a sense, his customers. And it's kind of unclear. You know, sometimes we're his customers, sometimes we're his partners, but there is a demand for people who want to. If you tell like a Brooklyn software engineer, you know, in his 20s, it's like a high-paying job, like, oh, come out to a farm and get to build tractors and a house and live in an uncomfortable, bug-infested kind of dorm, maker dorm or something. Like they would love this because there's a model. Like these are the people who go to Burning Man. These are people who want to make life hard for themselves and like to do challenging things. And they think their air-conditioned co-working space in New York City is too nice and too clean.
do you think there's like get one, what is it where you would be, the margins on the open source technology is so much better that you would be able to buy one and then give one? You know how those programs work?
Yeah, no, I love those programs. Like here, we definitely, like, I'm building a 3D printer for the farm to leave, and then I'm going to take one 3D printer with me. But there are bike co-op programs where they teach kids how to fix like 6 bikes, and you get to keep the 7th one for free. I thought about a computer fixing cafe, you know, like this cafe, where you teach kids how to fix like 2 computers, and they get to keep the third laptop or the third computer for free as well. And I think that model ties the risk and the reward. Like they definitely have to put in effort. They're not just going to get something for free, because anytime you get something for free, I think you immediately don't value it. At least that's true for me.
Definitely.
I figure 90% of a store-bought 3D printer is labor, kind of, anyway.
Yeah.
So if you're using the labor to educate anyway, because it's necessary, you know.
Yeah, there's definitely a fine line in it, but for sure. And I used to rent Airbnb tourist, like Airbnb house for hackers and creatives, like a hacker house in New York City and in Seattle. And I definitely attracted, and the way I wrote the advertisement, the copy attracted people who kind of also wanted maker tourism. Like they were traveling on business or for pleasure, and they wanted to stay at a place that was like more interesting than a generic Airbnb. And they liked the fact that I had like LED lights and soldering irons and Raspberry Pis and like a bookshelf. So I had a great library, and I enjoy talking, like having those kinds of people around as well. So I imagine that as part of the funding model for this. Like this first house, the plan ideally is to find a family, help them get a mortgage, and then buy the house outright, and then have them be owners from the beginning. And then we use the money from that to renovate the next house with the next 2 houses, and multiply. So this year we do 1 house, next year we do 2 houses, and build up a network of people, a good reputation in the neighborhood or the community that we are actively working on houses. They can show up, they can tour the houses, they can ask questions, they can talk to the people who bought the first house, ideally. And but getting a mortgage is hard. So one idea we had was that people would live upstairs in the bedroom and then run the business, run the cafe down here, or maybe like 2 of the bedrooms would be people living here and 1 bedroom would be for Airbnb. And so that would, if they had trouble finding work outside the house, they could run the business in the house, and then it would be sort of self-sufficient in that way, right? It would be a community meeting space, and then they would be able to make the mortgage payment every month. And then after 7 years or some number of years, the title of the house would transfer to them. We would write the legal contracts and sort of consult with other housing nonprofits to to make that like airtight, to make that like trustworthy.
Hmm.
So that's one proposal. I wrote about it in our forum, and I think the biggest challenge is sort of like how to communicate that to people. Is that even appealing? Is that something that would succeed, or is it like too many details? Yeah, so that's definitely a thing that I would love feedback on.
Just have to be simplified in a more layman language that people who may not be as familiar with the terminology can easily digest it. Like, for example, one of the big things that's talked about in education is financial literacy.
Yeah.
So what you're discussing is a portion of financial literacy.
Yeah.
How do you own a home? What do you have to do?
Yeah.
And how do you maintain that home is a part of keeping a home, because a house is a major responsibility.
Exactly.
Because the minute something breaks, you have to fix it. You can't go call somebody and say, yeah, something broke.
Or if you do, you have to pay them. I mean, you're in charge of hiring a
definitely.
contractor. So yeah, I was in a home buyer education class. So there's this organization called Use Snapback, I think Banking Assistance Corporation, but they make you take a class before you can apply, before you can get loans from MSHDA, the Michigan State Housing Authority. And they go through exactly this material. It was taught by an instructor who was really good. And it's for first-time home buyers to qualify for a mortgage. And so they talked about how to save up money, how to like have a budget, and what the terms of a mortgage are. And I thought it was a really good class. And I think people who have been to that class, I think, would have the basic background to understand an arrangement like this. So one idea I had was to approach them, or to approach the instructor, because towards the end I helped them out. They needed to post this form, this PDF document, so everyone could download it, and she had trouble posting it in Zoom chat, so I uploaded it for everyone to download it. And so I think in her mind, I'm someone who can help with technical stuff.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I would love to email her and say like, do you think it's a good idea, or is there any way I can reach out to the people who passed this class? You get a certificate saying you've taken this home buyer education class. Can we ask them if anyone's interested in being our first customer?
Mhm.
I want to do it in a respectful way, but it's people who are like pre-selected to be literate about home buyer, or at least in the mindset. And people in that class were asking like very good questions, like, and some of them very young. Like I think there was this girl in her 20s, and she was like already like preparing to buy a home. So I was very impressed by her preparedness, because when I was 20 years old, that was the last thing on my mind, is like how to be responsible enough to buy a home. And
Likewise.
yeah. And now I wish I'd gotten started earlier, but it's no time like the present. I just turned 41 a few days ago, and I definitely am ready to buy a home, build a home, and help other people do the same. And that's the most appealing thing to me, is to like the feeling that we're in it together. Like, that's when it could be a co-op or what's called a mutual benefit association, like
Mhm.
a company that you're all working not for money, but primarily for a benefit to each other. It could be shared medical expenses. It could be shared housing expenses. It could be food buying, right? Like if you're in a CSA, community supported agriculture, or a food co-op, you're buying food in bulk from from a source, like together as members, and then people come and they pick up their groceries
Mhm.
every month or so. And ideally it's like cheaper and healthier than if you had to buy the food yourself. So that's my idea. Like people who need the benefit, they're not they have the same risks and rewards, right? They want to choose each other carefully. They meet regularly. They talk about, they're honest. They're able to talk about what they're concerned about. And they trust, like the feeling that someone wishes you well, like I wish for everyone to have a house, and I hope that comes through. And when someone wishes the same for me, like they want me to be able to have a house, I can tell that it makes me like them and trust them too. So I think that's an emotional component of the business that maybe doesn't come through when we're talking about nonprofit status and tax returns and mortgage agreements like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, one of the benefits of a nonprofit is that anybody who helps a nonprofit they can write it off on their taxes.
That is a big advantage.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a little more paperwork. I don't think it's impossible. It's definitely something that I
yeah.
will have to look into. But yeah, no, I mean, your feedback was really helpful tonight.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know Jason just sent me a video on, well, how was it defined? Earth bricks.
Oh yeah, the compressed earth bricks. Like
Yeah.
exactly.
That's dope. That's dope.
It's like a natural building material. People have used it for centuries, like the Great Wall of China and adobe houses in the Southwest that the Native Americans use. Those are all compressed earth bricks.
Mhm.
Essentially, they're fireproof. I'm gonna sound like a commercial, but I don't care. It's like super cool technology. It's fireproof, earthquake proof, waterproof, so it can resist flooding. It's cheap. Like you basically, when you're digging a basement in Detroit, you excavate a ton of dirt and you can just use that as your building material. That's enough for like at least a few of your walls.
There's a lot of gotchas.
So I would love to bring that back to Detroit and they look like normal homes. They look like normal bricks. It's not like an unusual home that would cause people to like have lower property value or something. I think it's resellable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it's just dirt and what is it, something special in the dirt? Or is it just the way it's compressed?
It's both. So it's the right mix of sand and clay. So all soil has some mixture of sand, which like sand from the beach, and
Mhm.
clay, which is like you can make ceramics or pottery out of it, and the two of them mixed together in the right proportion, and then a little bit of cement, like 5% cement, or it could be limestone because it's a little more environmentally friendly. So the limestone or the cement helps bind everything together.
Mhm.
And so you mix it, you compress it, you basically just squeeze it really hard with a machine, and you let it cure in the sun for 2 weeks. So, and that's the important part. If you don't wait long enough, and some of these buildings around here on the factory farm, when Marchand first moved here, he didn't wait long enough. He was filled with the zeal of building. He just wanted to throw up the buildings, and he didn't wait long enough, and they crumbled after some amount of time. And you can see them around. Some of the older buildings are still here as like a museum of past attempts, but it's a great learning experience. Like we walk around and we can see every building he tried to build in the past.
Yeah, that way Mel's still facing.
You said what about
That table so we can slide it in front of the computer table.
Yeah.
grab
And,
the
actually,
table?
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I apologize for the lack of furniture. We're working on it. Definitely appreciate you improvising and making do. I sat on those ladders so many times. Also, the nook when you go up the stairs, that's like a really cozy reading nook. I used to sit there and eat dinner and video chat with Adrian when I was at the house too. But we'll have proper cafe furniture as soon as we can.
I want to maintain eye line here, so it doesn't get awkward. Any more awkward than a video conference already is.
Yeah. No, it's the best of being a remote circumstance. But I actually have to leave soon too. I'm getting super hungry listening to Mike's vegan cafe molecular gastronomy and watching you guys eat. So I hope you have a wonderful meal. Please keep talking and hanging out with each other. Adrian, please send me the receipt, and I'm gonna go get my own dinner because I haven't eaten in a while.
All right.
All right, definitely thanks for the food.
Yeah, my pleasure. I hope we meet and talk again soon. Jonathan, it was great meeting you. I hope we can talk more.
Likewise,
some other
Paul.
time.
Yeah, that sounds good.
See you next time, Paul.
Okay.
See ya.
Take it easy.